Welcome to TheGaGG.com. This video series is Remington Ju-Ju 101. We had the Glockology series. We've now started the Remington Ju-Ju series. Very similar to Glockology. We have a 101. We'll probably have a 201. We'll probably have a 301. In this series, we plan on giving you the basic skills that you need to work with the Remington 700. Today's video is actually a breakdown of the parts in a Remington 700. Now, I'm not going to go into a detailed breakdown of some of the smaller parts. What I am going to do in today's video is give you the major parts of a gun and talk with you about their general orientation and how you'll see them in a gun. Now, right here, I have before me a Remington 700 SPS model. We've actually reviewed this model in some other videos, and this is a 308 short action that I've been in the process of accurizing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But here's a Remington 700 in all of its glory, broken out pretty much to the degree that anybody would ever want to break them out. For instance, things like this. This is the trigger cartridge. I'm sure you could break this down further. When you start doing that, you're probably going to have some interesting, breakouts that you're going to have to look at on that. I wouldn't do that, quite frankly, as we'll talk in a minute. I just replace the cartridges if I want to do it. So let's go through the parts pretty quick and talk about them. We have the stock. This is a SPS stock. And as you can see, it's all plastic. Completely plastic. There's no bedding, there's no pillar, there's no aluminum blocks in here. This basically has a complete plastic assembly that you're connecting, actually on the bottom, another plastic assembly to metal to actually create the foundation of your shooting. I wouldn't use it. If you're going to just go hunting with it, great. Otherwise, I'd chunk this right away. You have the Remington barrel. This is a 308 Winchester barrel. This taper is actually one of their smaller tapers. I think it's it's not marked on here. So there it is maybe. Nope, it's not marked on there. It is one of their smaller tapers. I think this is a varmint, or I'll have to look and get back with you. I might put it in the article for you. But it tapers down pretty narrow. This is the type of barrel I would use for utilitarian purposes, such as hunting. When we rebuild this, we're going to try it with the stock barrel and see how good it is. We'll know that everything else is blueprinted, so any inefficiencies that we see will come from the barrel. Now, many of you have heard the term action when you talk about the Remington 700. Action! The Remington 700, unlike in the AR world where you talk about receivers, has a nomenclature called action. This is the Remington action right here. It is the core part. If you were talking about most other weapons, you'd probably call this a receiver. But given that it's bolt action, it's called an action. Okay? And this is where your bolt slides in there. This sits essentially right here in your gun, something like that. And of course, you got the barrel coming off here, and there you have the action, okay? So that's your action. And we'll talk about some of the areas that we have to blueprint when we work on it. This is the lug. The barrel lug sits between the action and the barrel and maintains proper alignment between the two. So it looks something like that when it goes on there. Let me move my hand back here. Okay, and this is screwed down tight and it aligns everything. We talked about this a minute ago. This is the trigger cartridge. Orientation would be something like, there we go. Took me a second. Trigger cartridge. It actually sits off the bottom of your action, roughly right here, like that. Okay, I've removed this one for purposes of doing the accurizing work that we have to do. These pieces are part of the assembly that connects some of the inner workings of the trigger safety to the gun. This is actually your magazine well. It sits down inside the gun, right about here, I believe. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. And on the bottom, and you've got this spring that's the feeder spring that then sits down in there as well. And that ensures that your rounds, that you, in the case of this SPS, you push them down in there like that, feed up into the bolt every time you exercise that bolt. And then you have the trigger guard. Trigger guard sits down right down here on the gun. Now, as I said a minute ago, this is a plastic trigger guard. This is probably going to go away because we're going to get a different stock for this gun. And then you have some other small components, screws that hold the trigger guard in the assembly, some springs that are related to these parts. Here's my pins. I identified them as front and rear so that I wouldn't get them mixed up that came out of the trigger assembly. This is your Remington 700, folks. It is a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 part assembly at this level of breakdown. Not a lot of parts. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people like Remington 700s. Now, real quick, one of the things you do, and we're not going to get into the accurizing class, but one of the things that you do when you accurize a gun is you want to make these bolt lug faces lock evenly. You want to make sure that this is square toward the centroid of your axis of your barrel. You want to make sure that your lug is a good quality lug so that, because that's connecting those two pieces, right? If that's off. And then you got to make sure that the chambers is proper on this to chamber your rounds after you make any of those adjustments. Well, this is Remington Ju-Ju 101, basic parts of the Remington 700. We've done this on an SPS. It's pretty similar among all of them. In a few cases, you have a couple other parts because you have cartridge or magazine-fed versions of the Remington 700. This is TheGaGG.com, and I'm Luke Stevens.